pick one off the tree and taste it? Is it possible to do that?
Wow. That is delicious.
There's a crunching, you know, there's something about certain kinds of food, when you get that crunchiness to it, it creates a satisfaction. I don't know what it is, I think that's just psychological, but.
Well, I think what like a lot of chefs enjoy about the Asian pear is the texture.
When you think about it, the texture, it stands up, right? So
Yes.
you could saute it, you could fry it, you could do a lot of things to it, and it's gonna really stand up. You think about the cultural history and the legacy of the Kozuki brothers here in the Central Valley. Do you think about that in terms of the transition from them to you in your farming operation? Does that become part of your thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Kozuki brothers started this organization years and years ago with the father, and you know, they're personal friends of mine, and so I'm just happy to be a part of continuing what they started. They didn't have their kids to take on the farm, and so I find myself wanting to carry on the tradition for them in a way, even though I'm not related.
Yeah, you're an extension of their legacy, really.
Yeah, and you know, what they've done here, I have a lot of respect for, because they started it, and I feel compelled to continue it for them on their behalf.
Tell me a little bit about why they're called Asian pears to begin with, and where do they come from?
They're from Japan.
Japan.
Most of them are from Japan. There's a few Korean varieties, and then there's some Chinese varieties that we tried to grow, but they're too small. We've tried probably about 20 different varieties. And a lot of them, because of the heat, they just fall. And what we have now is what we think are the best.
Yeah, almost kind of engineered to the climate here in the Central Valley. Tell me a little bit about the history of your family with Asian pears. How did that all start, and do you remember what that was like when your father and great-grandfather were starting the...
No, it wasn't my great-grandfather, it was my father.
Your father.
And how the way it started was, you know, the first pear that we saw was a Japanese pear from Japan. And what he used to like to do is he would make a lot of trips to the Bay Area. When he went to the Bay Area, he would always take fruit, right? Well, he didn't want to take the common fruit that everybody already had, peaches, plums, and grapes, and stuff like that. So he wanted something different. And so when he saw that Asian pear, he thought, oh, that's it. If I take it up there, they're going to always ask me, what is that? Da, 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 da. So he he met a Japanese man in Lindsay who had it first. And we looked at it, and oh, it tasted good, it was different. And so that's how we first started with planting some of the Japanese pear.
And then, you know, we said, it's kind of small, color's not real good. So we started to plant some of the browns. Couldn't sell it. Sunset Magazine came out with an article on Asian pears. That was the turning point.
Oh, wow.
And then, I know Tad was with a buyer from, I think it was Kroger. They talked about Asian pears before lunch. They went out to lunch. They looked at that Sunset article. The guy says, these browns, how much do you have? And there's 5 pallets or something. He said, I'll take them all. And that was the start.
Wow.
But that Sunset Magazine article set everything going.
What year was that, Gary?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's got to be in the, I would say, in the late 60s or early 70s.
Tell me a little bit about the Asian pear itself. I mean, why is it so prevalent and such a good commodity here in Central California?
Yeah, the Asian pear, it grows really well here in this area, in particular, Parlier, California, because it gets the ample sunlight it needs. The weather's conducive for sweet, great size, great quality Asian pears.
I'm looking at these over here, right here. What variety is this right here off this
Yeah,
tree?
so these are Shinko varieties, and this is an organic orchard here. And you can see we've harvested several times here. And so there are some pears left on the trees, and we pick them by size and color. So when the color is just right, then we have the crews come in and harvest those pears.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for those of us who are not really aware of Asian pears, there's several varieties, correct? And what are the most popular from a consumption standpoint?
That's correct. We have 9 different varieties here, starting with the Shinsui. But really your 2 main varieties are the Shinko and the Hosui. Those are what most people know generally as an Asian pear, but there are an array of varieties from brown skin to yellow skin pears.
Wow. How long has your family been farming in this area out here in Parlier?
Before the Depression. In fact, my father, because he was born in Hawaii, he was a U.S. citizen, and they had that alien land, or whatever that law was, where if you were an alien, you couldn't own property. He owned a lot of property on paper. A lot of immigrants from Japan came and they couldn't buy land, so they asked my dad if his name could be on the deed. And so he did that, and for a long time, I would see people come at New Year's and they'd bring him a bottle of whiskey or sake or something. I'm wondering, what's going on? Then finally I found out that, hey, he was on the original deed for those guys.
Wow. There's probably no greater black eye in American history than the internment of American, Japanese American citizens during World War II. And I believe your family was impacted by that a little bit, wasn't it?
Yeah. In fact, we got relocated. I was born right before we went to Arizona, but we were very lucky. And there was a Hispanic guy that worked for my dad, and he was like the foreman. He was 4F, so military didn't take him. He moved into that house where we were. He took care of the ranch, and when we came back, he moved into another house, and we moved in. There's a lot of other people who either sold their property because we only had, I think it was like a week to pack and get out.
Yeah.
Or they turned it over to lease to people who now have huge packing houses.
Yeah. I think about this part of the valley, Reedley, Parlier, Dinuba, there is a strong concentration of Asian Americans, but primarily Japanese Americans. Why is that?
A lot of the people that live here are in farming, right? The Japanese, okay? And it's because they have their roots, the family roots came from Hiroshima in Japan. And that's a farming area and a farming community. So they were farmers back in Japan. So when they came here, that was the easiest thing for them to do and do well.
There's several different growers that grow the Asian pear, but not a lot of people grow them.
Yeah.
And mainly because it's a very tedious commodity to grow. We hand thin the blossoms off the tree. We hand thin the fruit when it's a dime to a quarter. And then we come through and we have to remove the fire blight, and we have to harvest several times. So it doesn't lend itself to all growers to farm it. It takes a very, like Juan said, there's a skill set. These workers have been working for years here, and it takes really a lot of work. There's not a lot of people that actually have the propensity or the tenacity to get after the Asian pear and grow it.
Yeah.
It's such a unique item, and it's a little bit of an animal, to be honest.
Yeah, I could imagine. And how many acres are out here? How many acres are you going to pick today?
Today they'll do approximately about 4 acres between these 2 crews that we have here on the organics. We do have other crew on the conventional, and they'll probably do about 4 or 5 acres.
And I notice there's ladders and everything done by hand. I mean, this is not a commodity that's going to be automated, right? It's got to be picked by hand.
It has to be picked by hand, yes.
And why is that, Dave and Juan? Is it because I know it's a really delicate fruit too, right?
Yes, the apples, the apple pear or the Asian pear is very prone to bruising. So if you're not careful with it, it can bruise, which then will reduce the shelf life. The quality and condition will be bad, and so people won't buy normally a bruised apple or Asian pear. So We have to handle them very delicately. We harvest them in totes, as you'll see. So the pickers are very careful to harvest it gingerly and place it in their tote as to not bruise them. It's a very smooth and deliberate way of harvesting.
It is. That's exactly what I thought when I walked in the field. There's a cadence and a rhythm to how they're picking this fruit, which is really fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. And we encourage them to be that way. We don't want them running through here. This is not an operation of speed. This is more of a deliberate operation of take care of the fruit.
What do you look for when you see these things, Gary? I mean, this is ready to go, right? This is ready to be picked?
Right. Asian pears will never get any sweeter once you pick them. But they're always juicy, as long as they don't get soft. You want them firm. And so you're just looking for color, because the more color, the more sugar it has.
Mm-hmm. And when it's soft, I mean, it's just aging, it's too old, too ripe.
It's over the hill.
And tell me a little bit about the harvest cycle. I mean, when do you begin harvesting Asian pears, and when does that cycle end?
Yeah, so we start with our first variety in July with the Shinsui, and we will finish, say this month in October, with the Shinsetsui. So the Shinko and the Hosui are the Shinko is still going on, the Hosui finished up already. So every variety has a timing rhythm of when it harvests. So it allows us to have Asian pears from July all the way into November. So we can provide our customers and consumers basically a longer time period for them to actually get the product and eat it and enjoy it.
Fascinating. Was the workforce as similar to the way it is now? I mean,
Yes.
I know there was different phases, different time in farming. We had Filipinos, Mexican Americans.
No, we had 99.9% Hispanics.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to say that when they needed help, we used to help them. I mean, financially, finding homes, you name it, we used to help them,
Yeah.
And in turn, when we said, God damn it, we got to finish this today, they'd stay longer, Yeah.
Mutual respect.
We have workers that's been with us for 15 years or longer. Like Juan, his dad worked for us. His dad was in the first amnesty program, and we did all the paperwork for him.
You and Tad were the integral part of the farming operation. Tad had his role. And what was your role every day? You're really more about the production in the field, right?
Yeah, my responsibility was all the crews, the guys. I would set them up. I would tell them where to go the next day. I would check their work. And then I also looked at new varieties, and also did, the training.
What was your role, Tad? What did you do every day there?
When I came back from the service, I stepped in the house, and my dad gives me this box, cardboard box. He says, here, you take care of this. I didn't know what was in it. Find the checkbook, all the bills and all that kind of stuff. So I did all that. But I think in those days too, I used to put out the payroll and all that. But in those days, we didn't have computers, but I was a pretty good typist. And so I used to type out all the checks. It was faster for me to put a roll of 3 checks in the machine, a typewriter, and type it out,
Yeah.
And then Gary couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then he didn't want to do it anyway.
Yeah. You were the business side of the farming operation.
I was, but I also drove tractor. I checked the water. I did all those other things.
In a way, your dad was almost a pioneer in the Asian pear industry, in a way. What are your fondest memories of your dad, Tad? Do you remember?
He's really a hard worker.
Yeah.
And he was really a good guy. I mean, he really provided for us, and he's the kind of guy that act tough on the outside, but he was a pushover.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still remember that, and I don't know how. I think maybe that's why I'm like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was really good, and he was really. When we were growing up from school, and we were like 12, 13, 14 years old, in the summertime, he took us to the river close by to fish every single day. And you think, oh, gee, he should be working. He just left the farm And that was because we had a foreman who was very good. He just left it up to him and walked away, took us fishing, you know.
Yeah. He valued time with you more.
He did. He
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Tell me what you would share with the world about what you want them to know about Kozi Farms and what you're most proud of when you come out here every day.
You know, that's a good question. I don't think that the average consumer understands like how many times an actual piece of fruit is touched. You know, they go to the store, most people go to the store and they go, oh, okay, well, I'll get that pear and put it in your basket. That pear has been actually blossom thinned, it's been hand thinned after the blossom thin, it's been harvested by a harvest crew, it's actually been packed at the packing facility where, you know, a lady has actually placed that fruit into a carton. Then that carton goes to the store and your local produce man actually grabs those pieces of fruit and puts them on the store shelf. So that individual piece of pear could be touched 5 different times before you even have the eating experience. And so there's a lot of people that worked to get it to you, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
I don't think, you know, most people just go in and buy product and that's, you know, that's where it's at and that's fine. But I think if I could help educate how many times and how much care went into that actual product and that eating experience that hopefully a consumer is enjoying, that's what I'd like them to know.
I think about the amazing legacy of you and Gary and your family, and what brings you the most pride in seeing that farming operation flourish like it is now?
That the fact that we were able to take something pretty small and on our own, we were able to get our own finances. We would go out and enlarge, get bigger and bigger. And pretty soon, like I said, is, you know, when you're farming 150, it's a piece of cake, but when you go to 850, that's really a lot of management, you know, and I thought we did a damn good job. But these guys that work for us, they, even today, right now, they know us well because we were right next to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we ate with them, we brought food to them, we stood right by them, and when it was hot, we were out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a respect with that too,
Yeah, there
because
is.
there isn't a hierarchy,
No,
and you're in
that's
the
right.
trenches with your fellow man.
We were,
And I think there's an appreciation for owners when they do that.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that too, that you're growing a commodity that's eaten by people all over the world, and it's right here in Parlier, California? Did you ever think about that when you were farming?
Yeah, because we used to raise, we were very early in the white flesh nectarines and peaches, and Taiwan used to take most of it. And we were very early in the Fuji apples in the area. Taiwan used to take it. It's amazing what your fruit, how they treat it over there in a foreign country. You know, how they say, well, this is really good, and they'll say, oh, Washington Fuji apples, that's for show, that's for a present. The California Fuji apple that's just yellow, that's the one we eat.
That's the one you eat. That's great.
You know,
That's a great story.
it makes you feel good.
Yeah, this is not easy work. I mean, farming and you know, picking commodities and you know the weather and the anomalies. I mean, there's so many challenges every day. Why do you do it, and what's the fuel for you to continue to do that to help feed the world?
We just want to provide the consumer with the best product possible, because there's nothing more rewarding than say going into a store and watching a consumer buy your product. For me, that's the absolute best. When you can go in and somebody is buying a product that you produced and they go home and have a great eating experience and they come back and buy it again, that to me is everything.